Where's everyone going? Where's everyone going? So they say, Ravenish saying shear, Ravenish saying shear. So everyone runs out. So he's running down the stairs and he smacked straight into Ravenish himself. And Ravenish asked him, Avu lived here. So he said, Ravenish Dakshir, Ravenish Dakshir. Was the story they used to say over. But he was a massive tzaddik and an onav, ad kedei kach, that he never wanted anyone to think that he was anything more than a simple man. And there was once a bacher who had to stay in his house over Shabbos, so he slept in the living room because Rebbeinu lived with very meager possessions. So he probably only had a small one-bedroom apartment, and this bacher slept on the floor of the living room. And at 2:00 in the morning, Rebbeinu comes out after he's sure everyone's sleeping, and he sits down by the dining room table to learn. And the bacher like rustles a little bit. Quickly, Rebbeinu jumps up and he runs over to the cholent to make believe like he's checking on the cholent, and he picks up the vat, and he's shuffling back into his room. And as soon as it's quiet again, Ravenish comes out to learn again. So again, the bacher rustled. He was testing, and again Ravenish runs to the cholent, but thought it was burning, and he saw that Ravenish didn't even want him to know that he was up in the middle of the night learning. So those were the tzaddikim of yesteryear that Baruch Hashem, many of us had an opportunity to meet firsthand. Yesterday, we also lost one of the greats of Toronto, Rabbi Shreichet was nifter yesterday. So yesterday, we got into a big sugya of Kinyan Peiros to Kinyan Agov. It all started because of a family feud. Mrs. Abba, the second, so Mrs. Abba was married to Mr. Abba, and they had a child, Shmuel Bar Abba. I think they might have also had a child, Yirmiyah Bar Abba. I'm not sure because Yirmiyah Pascal like Shmuel, right? So Mrs. Abba, then her husband died, and she remarried Mr. Abba II. And after she remarried Mr. Abba II, she thought to herself, "Hey, I brought with me into the second marriage a lot of assets that I had with me from my first marriage. I want my son Shmuel to get those exclusively. Why should these assets be absorbed by my new husband? And then when I die, when he dies, it will be given to his son. I want it to go to my son." So after she was married, she gifted all of her nichsim, all of her assets that she brought into the marriage, she gifted to her son Shmuel Bar Abba. And then she died. So the question was, does Shmuel Bar Abba get to keep it? So Shmuel Bar Abba went to the Rav, Yirmiyah Bar Abba, who I suspect must have been his brother. And Yirmiyah Bar Abba told him, "It's yours. Of course it's yours." But the problem was, Mr. Abba, who's still alive, went to Rabbi Yehuda, who said in the name of Shmuel that if a lady sells from her nechosim, so he's no better. This Shmuel Bar Abba is no better than the Kuchais, and of course the assets go to Abba, to the second husband, and that was the dispute. So the Gemara decided that it's going to be totally in whether or not you hold Kinyan Peiros Kinyan Agov. And in fact, when Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba was questioned, doesn't Shmuel paskin that Abal Mochi Bi'ad L'Kuchos? So how can you justify this going to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Abba? He said, "I don't know from Shmuel. I know a Mishnah," and he brought down a Mishnah that said that if a son sold the assets of his father, a father gifted assets to his son. The father told the son, thank you so much. This field should be yours, mikanu la'achar misasi." And what that means is the father is saying that the gufa karka belongs to you, but I want to be able to sustain myself off of this karka until I die. So I'm going to be oichel peiros. I have a kinyan peiros to eat the peiros of this karka until I die. Then when I die, it becomes fully yours. Now this son, before his father died, sold it to a third party, sold the rights he had in this field to a third party. And the question is, does the third party get it? I'm going to add even more. When the Brisa says he sold to a third party, the Brisa says that he gets it. The third party gets to keep it. But there was a question: under what circumstances does the third party get to keep it? Does the third party only get to keep it if first his father died, and then the son owned the property completely, and then the son dies? What if the son died first? So the son never realized the true kinyan in it, because as long as the son was alive, the father had a kinyan payerson, and therefore he doesn't own it enough because the father's kinyan payers holds back, and therefore it does not go to the lekech. And that was a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan held the only time the mechira is a good mechira is if first the father died. That means now the son owns it completely, kinyan parish and kinyan guf. Then it will transfer over to the person who he sold it to. But if the son died first, that would not transfer. However, Rish Lakish holds that even if the son dies first, the chasim will still transfer to the lekech, because he holds kinyan payers lav kinyan guf. That the father has a kinyan payers is not really a penetrating grasp in that piece of property. We consider it completely belonging to the son who had the kinyan guf, and therefore the sale is valid. So Zok Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, based on this, why is there a difference between the kinyan payers of the father when the son has the kinyan guf, or the kinyan payers of the husband when the wife has the kinyan guf? Just like Rish Lakish holds kinyan payers lav kinyan guf tami, and the son's sale is a good sale, so too this woman's gifting of her asset to her son should be valid. And that's where we were holding yesterday. I want to take a pause before I go weiter, because Tosfos asks a general kasha, an important general kasha. The halacha is if you want to be able to bring bikurim, if you want to be able to bring bikurim, it has to be land that belongs to you, because in the parsha of bikurim you say haaretz asher nasata lanu, the aretz that you gave us. So the land has to belong to yours. If you hold kinyan payers lav kinyan guf, that means nobody ever owns land, unless it's ish mipi ish mipi ish mipi ish, unless every single one of the children in his generation was only son. But if there's multiple children, we also know that we hold of ein breira, and therefore, whenever two sons have to split a Yerusha, we don't say that whatever part Reuven took was obviously always going to be destined to go to him, and whatever Shimon took was obviously destined only to go to Shimon. Rather, we say we have no idea. Reuven might hold Shimon's Yerusha, Shimon might hold Reuven's Yerusha, but they're lekuchos. We did a swap, and that's how we work it out. And we even learned at Kedei Kach that every yovel, since every lekuchos is bottle, every yovel they can split it again. And remember, we were talking how every generation it gets even more and more complicated. But I'll call upon him, if you hold kinyan payers lav kinyan guf tami, how is it even possible to take bikurim? That is the shayla that Tosfos asks. So Tosfos answers, let's look at it even in the first generation when Yeshua split up the land. When Yeshua split up the land, it was also Yerusha. I mean, when you learn the Gemara of Basra, you learn that the land was given to the Yosy Mitzrayim, and their children yashined it. So when Yeshua was splitting up the land, he was really saying, this is the piece that your grandfather got leaving Mitzrayim, and what you're getting now is also only Yerusha. So even the very first generation, how did they ever bring bikurim? Unless it was also only one son. The Deterrent is, just like by Yeshua, you know what you say? Yeshua split it up al pi nevuah. So we say that there for sure it won't be chosher b'yovel. Such a splitting, even though technically you might be able to argue and say that there is breyer involved, but we say it sticks. So too, Zok Tosfos. I'm sorry? So al pi nevuah, that's right. So Zok Tosfos, it's possible to hold ein breyer, but nevertheless, it won't go back by yovel. So even though technically ein breyer, but not every Yerusha goes back by yovel. It saves us from a huge mess. It would be a huge mess in every generation. And therefore, you could still say Asher Nasat Alonu, because it remains, once you yarshin it and there's a chalukah, that will remain with you. So then it's not only a kinyan payers, it's kinyan guf as well. Because the reason why it was only a kinyan payers is because you can eat payers of this karka till yovel, but then it goes back. But if it's going to stay by you forever, it's going to be considered a kinyan guf.
Maybe that's why it says lanu, not li, because lanu you give it otherwise.
Could be, yeah. Okay, so we're holding now where we need to come back. Right now, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba has the upper hand. He seemed to have brought a very compelling raya from Rish Lakish, who we paskin like that Kinyan Paris lav kekina guftami. So Amar Shmuel zu ein yadayim l'mishnah saying that I agree with how you learn chop in Rish Lakish, but there's absolutely no raya from the case of Rish Lakish where a father gifted nechasim to a son, and the son sold him even before the father died, and the son died before the father. You say that the father's kinyan parish is not valid, and therefore, or it's not a kinyan guf. It's not enough to stop the sale from his son who holds a kinyan guf to sell to a third party. That's not a right to a woman selling the nechasim that she has. Why? So let me stop you for a second. Let me ask you a simple question. If the father, why would the father give a gift while he's alive and say mikanu la'achamisa to his son? His son, his son's going to get it anyway. His son's going to yarshin it. So if the father's telling the son while he's alive, mikanu la'achamisa, he obviously wants to give him something more than just what he was going to get anyway, la'achamisa. So there, his nesina is a stronger nesina. There you might say kinyan peiros lav kekina guvdami. There he's totally relinquishing his ownership in it, and he even wants to allow his son to sell it in his lifetime, because if that's not what his intention is, then what's he saying? Let him just leave it, and his son will yash it anyway. So therefore, my time, Yosef, if the case was a son gifting something to his father, and the father's not normally Yoresh, his son, if the whole case was a case of nechasav la'aviv, there you might be able to prove across the board the kinyan peiros lav kegin haguftam. Elahashta, where we're talking about a son who's going to yash the father anyway, because Tanya case of nechasav lebnoi, the reason why there it's considered a full nesina, and the father's kinyan peiros will not withhold anything, is mishum deroyli yarshahu, because anyway the son would have been yashing the father. So the father in his gift must obviously want to be giving the son a greater interest in it than he has already anyways. Oh, that's gavaltic. That's exactly what the Gemara is going to talk. Maybe I'm just trying to get it away from one son to give it to another son. So we're going to get to there in just a moment. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says over here, I'm just looking at Rashi, the last 5-6 lines in Rashi, Akosov Nechosav Lavet. So Rashi says, the Afal Gav, the kinyan peiros kekina guftami regularly, Hacha Gufa Vadai Ikni Av Leben Bechayov, even Lamoichron Kashirta. Here, when the father is gifting something to a son, even though normally I will say kinyan peiros kekina guf, but when the father is giving it to a son, he's retaining less than the kinyan peiros kekina guf. He wants it to be the son fully to be able to sell it. The imishum la'achamisa, if he's only giving it to a son to impact la'achamisa, his son would have yarshened him anyway. So obviously, since he's trying to do more by giving this matana to his son, obviously that would work. But in a regular case of kinyan peiros, lav dafka. He wasn't destined to yarshen his mother. Who yarshens a woman? Her husband. Ella Rab Abba Baila. So therefore, that she gave it to her son Reb Shmuel has no validity, because that's a standard set of kinyan haguf. Her husband still retains a strong kinyan peiros, and therefore, in fact, the property does not go to Reb Shmuel. So Frek the Gemara Duvi's kasha. Amar lei. Abaye told him, Otu bra yaris Abba lo yaris bra. It's the same kasha with a different flip. The father yashus the son too. He might not be first online, but he's online, right? He is one of the Yorshim. So why would it be any different if you said Akosev Nechasav La'aviv than Akosev Nechasav L'Benai? Ella, why is the person gifting the property to his father? Why wouldn't he let it go to his sons? Because lavruchini lenichsi mibarekasi. For some reason, this man does not want to give his nechasim to his son, so he gives them to his father. That's what he's trying to do, and he's only concerned about after misasa. He's like not worried about now to give him a stronger kingdom. Hachanami lavruchini lenichsi me'achva asi. That's exactly what Duvi said. He might have more than one son, and he doesn't want it to go to this son, he wants it to go to that son. So that's why he's gifting it to his son now. But Lav Dafka, does he want his son to have a strong grasp in it before he dies? He just wants to make sure that after he dies, it's going to go to that son. So Oibazoi, Elamai, Enidem, and the Mishnah saying. So what distinction then is there between our case and the woman's case? Even though he's not trying to give her a stronger kinyan, a regular kinyan of kinyan haguf is strong enough to make the mechir chal. So therefore, you must have a raya from here that kinyan pairs lav kinyan haguf tami. Zokt Shmuel, you're playing a whole different game. When it comes to the kinyan pairs that a husband has in the kinyan haguf that belongs to the woman, there's a special takana that was made. Mishum takanas usha. There was a special takana that was made in usha. And what is that takana? The Amr Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, but usha skinu. In usha they were masakin. Or isha shemacher b'nichsim aluk b'chaye baila umeisa, and she died. Habal moitzim yara lekuchais. You're right. Kinyan Paris lavka kinyan guftami, and the husband doesn't have a grasp in it. And really, Ikardin, she could sell it, and it's too bad for her husband. But they made a special takana when it comes to nichsim aluk. The husband's ownership trumps everything, and he gets to take it back. So you have a beautiful shtickle Torah from Rish Lakish, but it has nothing to do with our discussion here, where Mrs. Abba II has no right to give away any of her nechasim to anybody because habal moitzi miyad halakuchis. Zok Rashi bushaskinu de'afagav de ba'alma lav kikina guftami. Even though normally we would say kinyan Paris is not kikina guf, and she should be able to sell. Nevertheless, Baal b'nichse ishtoi al muhu rabbanon l'shibude. The rabbanon strengthened the shibud, that right that the husband has in it. The chachamim bolstered and strengthened mishum eva, because he'll be angry if he doesn't get her assets. I only married you for your money, and now you're going to give your money away. And therefore, bahava kelakerech rishon. Therefore, he's always in the first position. So basically, what Shmuel is saying is, when it comes to maluk, it's a whole different story. Nothing works. So I'm sorry that you're very upset, Shmuel Baraba, but it's not yours.
That's not the reason. They'll tell me, oh,
Okay. Zok tehel gemara. Zok tehel gemara vater.
Maybe he wanted to push the not to have to pay the inheritance tax.
Omer of Idi bar Avin. Rabbi Idi bar Avin taught us afanan nami tanina. We also learned that there is this thing called takanasush. Me'idin anu be'ish ploin. Two Edim came along and said, Edus, that Ruvain was megarish shagiris ishtai. He was already megarish Leah, and v'nosan ksubasa, and he paid her in full. So if it's not true, who's being hurt? The woman's being hurt. Because let's say the ksuba is $500,000, and the Edim are saying that she has already been paid her ksuba, so now she's losing $500,000. And Barei, he tachto. And we see that they seem to be living together. In fact, she's not megureshes at all. Umisham shasoy, and she's living with him. And v'nimtzu zaymin. And these Edim came out to be zaymin, meaning she was never divorced, there was never a payment made. The whole thing is nishka shtoigi, nishka floigi. So now they're zaymin, and they were trying to be mafsid her the ksuba. Now the question is, how much damage are they liable for? Because what really were they hurting her? They weren't damaging her $500,000, the full value of the ksuba, because she may not have ever received the ksuba. Maybe she would have died before him, right? There's only a chance she would get ksuba. So how do we assess the value of what these Edim Zoyimim had intended to damage this woman? So the halach is Einar mishalmu kol ksubasa ela toivas hanas ksubasa. You only pay the toivas hana of her ksuba. What does that mean? Eizehu toivas hanas ksubasa. You make the following assessment: how much would a man be willing to pay? How much would somebody willing to pay a woman for her option here? The ksuba shalisha. If her husband predeceases her, or she becomes divorced, he will get the payment of $500,000. But if she dies, then my investment is zero. So it's like buying a life insurance policy on somebody else, right? So there is value to it, right? I'll pay money because if I happen to know that this guy has a heart condition and he has diabetes, and I know that he loves to eat, and he has high blood pressure, and he loves to eat herring and cake and cookies, it might be a good deal, right? So he is investing. How much would someone pay? Not $500,000, but he might pay $100,000 for the chance that he might win $500,000, right? I mean, I don't know. Where is there a better chance of winning? In such a case or in the Bava raffle? I'm not sure, right?
In America, it's a big business. It's called the AK policy.
Okay. So Zog to Gemara, I'm dem kama adam right to live mikshubasa shalsu. Shiv disarmal iskasha, he makes $500,000. They made up, but if she dies, you are shana baila, and his investment is zero. And that's what the Adim have to pay, because that's the fact what the damage. Break the Gemara, why do they have to pay that? Visal kedaitach, lesser the takanus usha. If you does know the takanus usha, then fakir. That type of tanah is worth more, because she has a way of stopping her husband from yashining her if she dies. What could she do? Amay Rishanabala, Tizbin Ksubasa Lagamri. Let her sell her ksuba. So if you would hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, every woman could sell her ksuba to a third party, guarantee that they're going to get it. Now we're not talking about the money Messiah, because that you won't get, but we're talking about the millions of dollars of assets that she brought into the marriage, right? She sells them. If it works the way Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba wants to say, so then really the Edom should have to pay her all of those assets, not just Toivas Hanoah, because she could guarantee that she's going to get it. Zok to Gemara, Amar Abaye, Im Amar b'nichsei malug, you might be right about nichsei malug. You might be right about nichsei malug. But Yoimer b'nichsei Toin Barzal, she cannot sell. So let's see Rashi. Im Amar b'nichsei look, Shatucha l'moichra. There she might be able to sell. For that, you're right, you might need a Tekanas Usha. But you don't have a right to Tekanas Usha from here, because here we might be referring to the Nichsei Toim Barzal. Nichsei Toim Barzal are those that are assessed at the time of the marriage, and now they sort of belong fully to the husband, and should he divorce her, he has to pay her out what he took in at the beginning. But she has no ownership stake in it. So you don't have a right to the Tekanas from this case, because this case might not require the Tekanas because it might be speaking about Nichsei Toim Barzal. But in fact, for Nichsei Malug, you do need the Tekanas.
How is she gonna guarantee it? Because she's gonna sell it.
If she sells it to a third party, then the husband will for sure have to pay it, even though she does. For Nichsei Malug. Amar Abaye, Toivas Hanoah. We're now discussing this concept of Toivas Hanoah, the value of the chance of getting the payout of the ksuba. That's the discussion we're having. Since it entered into our focus, name a bamilsa, I'm going to say a nice halacha about it. Toivas hanoah liishav. What happens if a woman wants to sell her toivas hanoah, right? So who gets to keep that money? Is that her? Does she get to keep it, or does her husband also get to keep that? Because whatever all her assets become his, right? So toivas hanoah liishav. The woman gets to keep that money. If you're going to say that the husband gets to keep that money also, so then lemrula edim, let the edim tell this woman, Mayav Sedinach. Lamaisa, we didn't cause you any type of loss by claiming you got your payment already. Because Iyav Mizabnus law, Latoivas Hanoah, Bal Hava Shokumina. Why should we pay you the Toivas Hanoah, right? We just learned that the edim had to pay the Toivas Hanoah. You would have never gotten the Toivas Hanoah, because you would have had to give it to your husband anyway. So then we haven't costed you a penny. So that's why it must be that she would actually be able to keep the money and her husband wouldn't have a grasp on it. So now they are hurting her that. Since they are hurting her that, that's what they have to pay. Amar of Shalman, Mishum the Ikaravach Pesa. No. The type of to know that the damage to her is, yes, the husband gets to keep it. But if there's more money in the household, and if her husband just netted another $100,000 because she sold the type of another ksuba, she can at least ask him for a new shetel. Right? It's a good time for her to ask him for a little money. So she will benefit personally from it, because there'll be more money in the household, and that's what the Edim are being mastered, and that's why they'll have to pay it. The halacha is that Toivas Hanoah goes to the wife. If she sold Toivas Hanoah, the husband doesn't have his grasp on that money. The Ein Habal Oichel payers. And therefore, if she invests that money that's solely hers, the husband has no rights to it at all. My timer. Peira takino le rabbanon. The rabbanon said that you get the payers of any assets that your wife has, but this is peira the peira, because when she sold it for Toivas Hanoah, it's the payers it already is payers, and if he would be entitled to the payers of that money, that would be payer de payer loita kinel rabbanon. And Tosfos gives some other examples. Let's say there's a sheep of nichse maluk, and it got stolen, and now the ganev was caught, and he has to pay keren and kefel. So the kefel is the payer de payer. The woman gets the kefel, the husband gets the keren. But of course, if there's a sheep of nichse maluk, and the sheep gives birth, so that's also payer. The sheep gives birth, so that's payers. If the child gives birth in the second generation, that's also payer to payer technically. But that, since it's asimigufa, that for sure the husband gets. What the husband doesn't get is something like a chiyuv of kefel, which doesn't grow out of the animal. So to this payer to payer, the toivus hana, the husband has no rights to. Ki also Papa for Afuna Bishua, mi bei Rav. When her Papa and her Bishua came from the household of Rav, Amar, he said, Tandida l'takana susha. We had a brisa that supports the concept of takana susha, that the husband has such a strong control over any of the wife's assets that she would not be able to sell them. We learned that it's very bad to come into contact with an eved or an isha. Why? Because a chayvul behem chayiv. If, and now we know what this whole sugya is doing here, because we're going to bring a raya relevant to this sugya from our Mishnah. If you hurt a woman, you're going to have to pay in full. But if a woman is chayvul you, she's pater, not because ba'etzem she's pater, because she has no money with which to pay you. Right? We learned that if she ever gets divorced or her husband dies, then she would be mechuyev to pay. But for the time being, you can't expect a check in the mail anytime soon. If you hold, there's no such thing as takana susha, which means a woman can sell her assets, so she has something of value. So let her pay right now. Tis ben nichsim, let her sell her nichsim, and she would have cash, and that cash does not belong to her husband. And let him pay. So she doesn't have cash now, but she should be liable to. You should be able to force her, because it should be a shibud on your right to the nichsim, and she should be forced to sell it so that she has the money, and then she'll have to pay. So I bezo, you have a raya that there is something called takana susha, and in fact she cannot sell it. According to you, that there is takana susha. You think it's any better? You're right. She can't sell it completely because of takana susha. So she doesn't have that money, but she still has a source of money to pay. Let her at least sell the toivas hana. In other words, if my husband dies first, then I'm going to get it. So let her at least, so she can't sell it for the full price, but she could sell it for a reduced price of toivas hana. So once again, she has a way to get a hold of money. We already said that if she sells the toivas hana, she keeps the money. So she has a way to pay. So why do we say pigos and ra force her to pay by liquidating the toivas hana of her ksuba of a titinlei? Ella, you have to say that what was the case where we said pigos and ra? Under what circumstances does our Mishnah say Anisha's pigos and ra is the last law? If she doesn't have nichsim maluk, she's a woman who didn't come in with millions of dollars worth of properties. She doesn't have any nichsim maluk. So hakanami, I'll say there's no takana susha. You're asking me she's selling nichsim maluk? It's speaking about a woman who doesn't have any. Hakanami the last law. For the Gemara, we're still not out of the woods. The tizbim shubasa b'tayvas hana. Let her sell her base ksuba, her mana umasayim, the part that the husband has to give her. Whether or not she brought any money into the marriage, there's still an amount of ksuba that the husband has to give a wife. And let her at least pay that part. So tomorrow that we don't let her sell. Ha mani Rab Meir our Mishnah holds like a mayor. Damar aser loyla adam sheyisha es ishtoi afilu sha'achas b'loy ksuba. He's not allowed to live with his wife even for one moment if he doesn't face a huge liability the moment he gives her a divorce. We're trying to make it expensive for a man to divorce his wife, so he should think twice before he does that. But time am I, what is the reason? If the whole reason is that he's faced with a huge expense, if he wants to divorce his wife, so let her sell it to a third party. He's still faced with an expense. What's the difference if he's paying it to her or he's paying it to somebody else? Well, we know a big difference. He'd rather spend $1 million by a lawyer than give her $10,000 of alimony. But that's besides the point. The halach is haka loy megarshla. Here you have the same thing preventing him. You have the same disincentive for him to divorce her. The megarshla also hanach tezavnu gabi lo ksubasa minei. he's still not going to want to divorce her, because what's the difference if he has to pay the $100,000 to her or if he has to pay it to the purchasers? At the end of the day, you should still have that disincentive. What's the English word for disincentive? It's a push of the English word.
Disincentive?
Yeah, something that will stop him from doing it. There's a word for it.
Obstacle.
Obstacle. Okay.
Sweet. Listen, I have my entire background.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. So you still have that. So let her sell it. Let her sell it, and therefore she'll have money with which to pay her damages. Zakta Gemara, Ella, Loy. I'm sorry. Ella Toivus no milininu. Toivus no a deterrent. Oh, that was the word. Ella Toivus no milininu. Now I'm hearing the word deterrent every day now because Biden doesn't want to do a deterrent to stop these Mishagoyim from attacking. Okay, Biden's not doing a disincentive. Deterrent, right? Ella Toivus no milinin. This whole concept of saving Toivus no, of selling Toivus no, it's not a tangible asset. It's called mili. It's just words. Umili loy mishtabdi. And yes, technically she could sell it to make money, but is she mishubah to do that? When someone does a chavala, when someone damages someone else, he has a shibud to pay, right? If someone's mazik, his nechosim become a shubadim, you force him to sell his karkoyos to pay off. So is this an asset that a shibud could be upon that we would force her to liquidate in order to pay off the chayvus? The answer is no. Umili na mishtab. Fact ma'alam aloi, mili the mizdavni b'dinrininu. This is not stamili. This is mili that's sellable. So it should be something that would be meshubah to pay for her damages. El mishum de Shmuel. Rather, it's because of Shmuel's halacha that we don't going to force her to sell her ksuba money. It's because of Shmuel's halacha that we're not going to force her to sell her ksuba and use that to pay. I'm sorry that my camera shut off, so I have to turn that back on. The Amar Shmuel said, if someone sells a shtar chayv to his friend, it's not focusing. V'chazar umachloi. I can't see. I feel like I'm flying blind. Supposed to focus.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's perfectly fine on our end.
Oh, you can see good?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then
No, I can't.
So Reuven is a lowlife. What did Reuven do? Reuven was a malva, and Shimon owed him $100,000, and Reuven then went and sold the rights to claim that $100,000 to Chaim, right? And then Reuven went and was moichel the Chaim. Chaim just got messed up because he spent money to buy a Chaim worth $500,000, and now Reuven was moichel. There's no Chaim there. So even when someone sells a Chaim, it's still going through the loiva. Still going through the malva. So Amoichel Strachov the Chaveri, V'chazer Umachloi Machel, V'afilu Yorish Moichel. Even the Yorish of the malva would be able to be Moichel Achoy to the loiva and now mess up the purchaser.
What did you mean when you said it still goes through the malva?
Because otherwise, how could the malva be Moichel? If when the malva sells the Choy, it's a direct relationship from the loiva to the purchaser, so where do I have any right? It must be still going through me, and therefore, if I'm moichel, it messes up the purchaser. I feel yarish moichel. So the problem is, how could we tell her to sell if she might be moichel? So Amri Zoktimar, so big deal. Zvun is Zavin, v'titinle. First, let her sell it to this poor, unsuspecting Lakeach, and she'll have that money now to pay the person that she damaged. And if she's moichel, farfallen. So it messed up the kech. Well, why shouldn't you do that? She still has a way to extract money, and therefore, why don't we force her to pay? Amri, maybe call the gabi bal vade mochel. It's her husband. So it's not because she might be mochel. She'll for sure be mochel, right? She doesn't care. She wants to save her husband the money. She'll for sure be mochel. And then ba'afsedine lahu zvina b'yadayim la'afsedinu. So to make her sell something and lechatchila set it up that this poor purchaser should be scammed, we're not going to do something like that. Frank, the Gemara, I have a better idea. Let her sell it to the guy who wants her to pay. So let her sell it to him. I just busted your nose off. How would you like to buy the Brooklyn Bridge from me? I'm going to sell you the Toivas Hana for $100,000. Let her sell it to him, the Toivas Hana, and then she could turn around with that money and pay him out for his Kabbalah, right? And even if she'll be marked later on, so he's no further behind, but at least There's a chance that he's going to get paid. So Nachama, the Chetem is vinin alayla who the chavla by b'toybas anah. The e mochla legabi bal if she taki is mochla aten nishkaferlich loy kamafted the hashtanami loy midi kayahavale. He's no further behind. At least maybe now he got some payment now. That's not a good idea because you're hacking Bez in the Chinik for no reason. So if call legabi bal vade mochla, we know she's going to end up being mochel. V'akruche beidina bechti le'matrachina. Bezins not going to make themselves mashiga to force her to sell so that she'll have the money, so that she'll be able to pay if they know the whole thing's going to unwind anyway. Bezin doesn't hack a chine. Ella, Hadatanya. So again, what are we trying to prove over here? We asked Akasha if you hold of Taiva Sana, why can't you sell? So she cannot sell because it's not going to accomplish anything because she's just going to be moichelet at the end. We also learned a brisa. This is already new. What if the person who she was chayvelin was actually her husband? The halacha is lo yivsidak subasa. She will not lose her ksuba. In other words, we don't force her to liquidate her ksuba to pay. Break the more amai. Tis b'nei lehalei luksubasa lebayla b'tayvesana v'hachavala. Let her sell the Toibus and Navar Ksuba directly to her husband, right? The Machlei Lagabe Baal Lekab Seda. And then if she's Machlei Lagabe Baal, there's no Pseda because he's the one who's going to be the loiv anyway. Zaktuma, that you for sure can't do. Havade Reb Meir, the Amar Asal Adam Sheyises Ishtoi Afilu Shachas V'Loi Ksuba. If she's going to give him the Ksuba money, that even though she's Michael, he won't have to pay that end. But the moment she's paying him this money for the Chavala, now it no longer costs him anything to divorce his wife. Either she'll be Michael or he has the money. So at this point, there is no more danger for her because regardless, if she's Michael, he keeps the money because he's the husband, and if she's not Michael, he's the purchaser. So regardless, he keeps the money. So he has no deterrent. Thank you, Chaim and Mati. There's no more deterrent for him to divorce her. The time of Makadesh Shaloi Tehei Kala Ben of Loitzia. But Hacha Megarishla. Here he will be Megarishla. The Gavilai, the Chavalai Minay. And he'll have the Chaval anyway. Freik the Gemara, Ihachi, if that's the case, then even if he doesn't pay her, Hashanami Megarishla, the Gavilai, the Chavalai Minay. There's no way to avoid this problem. Because if he wants her to pay her, if he wants her to pay him, he'll divorce her now. And then he'll pay her the Moed Ksuba, and then he'll get it right back. So the moment she did a chavola to him, and now there's a shibud on her to pay, even though sometime in the future, he already lost his deterrent. Because even if he doesn't do it now, he can divorce her right now. And he doesn't have a deterrent because he knows, yes, he'll have to pay her 100,000, but she'll have to give it right back for the chavola. So we lost the deterrent anyway. So once we lost the deterrent anyway, let her sell it even before he divorces her. Zok to Gemara, it's not a deterrent. Kagoin de nafish ksubasa. Yes, the damage was $2, and the ksuba was $100,000. He's not going to divorce her, force him to pay $200,000 so that he can collect the $2, right? So there must be the case is kagoin the navish ksubasa. The mishabahu porta to make back his little bit of money that he's entitled to because of the chavala loy mafsid tuva. He's not going to pay out the entire ksuba that was more. Frank Gemara v'denefisha ksubasa miksuba deraisa. If the ksuba is more than the ksuba deraisa. So meaning, let's say ksuba deraisa is masayim, right? And he gave her an extra $100,000. He upgraded that. So why don't we do nukma aksuba deraisa? Ve'idich tizbin anahlei ve'chavlei. Rabbi Meir holds you need ksuba. And a person without ksuba, you have a problem because there's no deterrent. Let her liquidate the extra $100,000 over and above the minimum of ksuba, so the deterrent is still in place, but she can still pay him back by selling to him the excess that she was going to get from her ksuba.
She punched him in the nose.
Exactly. Zok Gemara, you have to say kigoin the loy nefisha ksubasa mi ksuba deirasha. You have to say, in order to be able to explain why she doesn't liquidate, you're going to have to say that it's the same amount as the ksuba deirasha, and therefore any minimizing anything that you'll sell from it will be infringing on her mayor's problem that now the deterrent is not there. So you have to say you're going to loy nefisha ksubasa mi ksuba deirasha. To have a chavla arba zuzi. Let's say her chavala was only 4 zuzim, and the the make suba, the minimum to make suba for an almana would be 25 zuz. The mishum arba zuzi, in order to get payment of 4 zuz, loy mafsid esrim v'chamisha. He's not willing to pay out 25 zuz to get a repayment of 4 zuz. Ella zok the Gemara. Tanya. That's what we learned. Keshem shaloi timkar v'hitachta. The same way she's not allowed to sell the ksuba while she's under him, while she's married to him. Kach loy safsid v'hitachta. So too, she shouldn't lose her ksuba when she's under him. What does this mean? Sell, we know. What do you mean she shouldn't lose her ksuba? So Rashi explains what it is that where the Gemara understands this price as saying. So I'm looking at Rashi about 5 lines down in the skinny lines. At this point, this is what we think shot in this price is. Just like she cannot sell her ksuba while she's married to him. Once again, because we have the problem of a mayor. So too, exactly what our sugi is. If she does damage to anybody, we will not force her to liquidate her ksuba under any circumstances because we want that deterrent to always be in place. But Freik the Gemara, if that's the case, there is a case where we would allow her. We would be mafsid her ksuba. When is that? As we just said, if her ksuba is $100,000, the minimum ksuba is only $50,000. That $50,000 we would force her to liquidate because that doesn't infringe on her mayor. So how could a bride say never lo safsid hitachto? Sometimes there is a case where it will be safsid. No, that's not what the price means. Avada, no matter what it is, you never make her liquidate her ksuba ever, ever, ever for any reason whatsoever. So what does it mean? Kach lo safsid hitachto. Amarava seifa also no ksubas bedin dichrin. V'achi katani. Keshem shamecheres ksubas al acherim lo yefsida ksubas bedin dichrin. My time is Zuzi who don't sua. Kach mecheres ksuba lebayla lo yefsida ksubas bedin dichrin. My time is Zuzi who don't sua. So let's stop a second. There's something called ksubas bedin dichrin, and that is as follows. Imagine a woman gets married, and she brings in $10 million worth of assets to the marriage, right? And this husband might have another wife, and this other wife might bring in $100,000 to the marriage. What's going to happen? Both of these women are going to die, and the husband's going to have assets of $1,100,000. So her son is going to get half of that, $550,000, and the other son, the son of the other wife, is going to get $550,000. The shver is going to say, "Are you crazy? I didn't put in $1 million into this marriage, so Yenim's kid should have it. I did it for my own." So there's something called ksubas b'nidikrin, which means whatever penny she brings into the marriage is guaranteed only to go to her children. So therefore, when the husband dies, even if the woman died earlier, and the husband now yashined everything, when the husband dies, $1 million are going to go to Rachel's children because she brought $1 million into the marriage, and only $100,000 goes to Leah's children because she brought $100,000 into the marriage. So that's a way of encouraging a shver to give nadin because he's guaranteed that his nadin are going to go to his einiklik, not the Yenim's einiklik.
So, just hear me, whatever.
Wait, let's stop a second. So this didn't come from the father. This was her assets that she had independent of the father from her first husband. So this is not a ksubas b'dichin. So here's the case over here. What happens if a woman did not have any money? She didn't have any money, and she went and she sold off her ksuba to somebody else. So if she sold off her ksuba to somebody else, what happens? If he dies first, right, then that person will get the ksuba, the $1 million. But what if she dies first? That guy's nothing. Here, she died first. So if she died first, whoever bought that from her lost his money. But now the money's in the pot. Maybe you don't take ksuba to b'nichri anymore because the husband will say, "Hey, you sold it already. If you sold it already, I don't have to give it to your son. I can split it evenly." Zoktun to Braisa, kishem, shaloi timkar v'itachtov, kach lo safted v'itachtov, meaning even if she sold it to bring in some money and she died first, her children will still be entitled to the ksubas b'nindichrin. So let's see this inside now. Zok Gemara, Amarava Seifa also the ksubas b'nindichrin. V'achikatan. Kishem shamacheres ksubas alacherim. Just like if she sold the ksuba to a third party, lo yivsida ksubas b'nindichrin, and she died first. Nevertheless, her children will still get all those assets. My timer, it's not because she really meant to sell it. It's me, Zuzi who done sua. She was obviously very tight for cash. She was stuck. She was in a tight spot, so she sold. But Avali, she's not giving up her rights to the ksubas b'nedichrin. Even if she made this deal with her husband, and she told her husband, "Give me money, I'll sell you my rights to my ksuba." There as well, or you've seen the ksubas b'nedichrin. My time is zuzehu dansua. Okay, we'll stop here, and we'll be tomorrow. What a beautiful, beautiful Gemara, but it's a little complicated, but it's a shmaka Gemara. Okay, and we have a bench to talk.
How do we know?
How do we know that halacha? That halacha is, I guess, that's part of the rules of ksubas b'nedichrin. You know, there's much, but that's a given. There's a long Rashi. Let me see if Rashi specifically makes that. Oh, because Rashi says there's already a sugi in ksubis that tells us that this is how ksubas b'nedichrin works, even if she sells. So the Brisa here is saying the additional halacha that it also applies even if she sold it to her own husband.
But if she punches him in the face, he has other reason to divorce her. It's not about it's scared. You're such a wife that punches your husband in the face.
There's a lot of geschmack, like Tosfos asks. Tosfos asks about Mechila. How could she be moichel? The moment she's moichel, if she's moichel to ksuba, her husband's not to divorce her. So Tosfos says she can make a knunya. Her husband will divorce her, then she'll be moichel, then he'll remarry her again. So there's a lot of different knunyas that you can make over here. Now I got to see why my camera does not work.